Hey everyone, this is Nerd Views, and there will be spoilers for the 1987 TMNT TV series, other Saturday Morning Adventures TMNT issues, and what I did and didn't like about this Usagi TMNT comic book issue, and also what I would have liked to happen in it. Timestamps to areas in this review will be in the description. Usagi Yojimbo's TMNT Saturday Morning Adventures one-shot issue is pretty and detailed to look at, has amusing and standout moments, but could have invented or used an unfamiliar, unestablished, and or new villain. This comic opens with Usagi encountering some crooks, who at first mock him based on his appearance. Amusingly, Usagi proves them wrong and takes them all down. The TMNT brothers catch up to Usagi and Donatello reveals that he has finally located Usagi's dimension. Donatello explains in his underground lab that it took a while to finally track down Usagi's dimension. While Usagi could have easily left the turtles, he and then Splinter convinced them to follow them into Usagi's dimension. Usagi could have easily just left them, but then the comic would be too short. You shouldn't be expecting something like where when from this crossover, and unfortunately the comic does use aspects of the 1987 TMNT dimension, than reintroducing or inventing something new in the 1987 TMNT Usagi dimension. Usagi meets a villager in his dimension who explains what happened to the other villagers, in which an off-panel battle occurred. The panels show the rhino Gen and other Usagi comic-related figures in the panels. This issue is longer than a usual Saturday morning adventure, so it would have been better to see these Usagi Universe characters get more panel time, even if it is just a few panels. Meanwhile, the big bad of this comic gets an alert that a high amount of light has been detected in this dimension, which he knows is impossible on this planet. He plans to ambush whatever emitted this light, which was Donatello's Turtlecom, in an earlier fight against some shadow warriors, and the big bad disguises himself as a hooded stranger. The stranger off-panel quickly goes into the forest and plans an ambush and calls out for help. Usagi and the TMNT reply to these cries of help and start fighting a new batch of shadow warriors that surrounded the stranger who is the big bad of the comic in disguise. Mikey amusingly tries to imitate Usagi's poetic lines, but flubs it. Donatello explains how the Turtlecom light emitter works. After he emitted another light to counter the Shadow Warriors to the hooded stranger, who responds to it amusingly, and then uses the opportunity to take the Turtlecom from Donatello, dropping and destroying it. This gives a chance for the bad guys' Shadow Warriors to regroup, surround the TMNT and Usagi, and the big bad of the comic revealing himself to the TMNT and Usagi. Donatello recognizes something familiar about that big bad's armor that isn't unusual to what he's seen. Donatello takes charge and surrenders for everyone, but secretly has a plan in mind. While they are captured and their weapons and comms are removed from them, Donatello reveals that the big bad is a species like the alien wingnut from the 1987 series, and recognizes the armor type and technology. He explains since there's an Earth in his dimension and an Earth in Usagi's dimension, that there is likely a sane species to wingnuts. In short, it's the parallel Earth theory. Since the panels showed the rhino Gen and other notable Usagi figures, it could have been an idea to invent or use something from the Usagi-verse, if you want to call it that. Because heck, the 1987 TMNT faced non-comic villains such as people that froze them in a diorama, and they got themselves out of that. So why couldn't they do that here? Sure, it makes sense on how Donatello used his knowledge of their technology to break out of their cell, but it could have been different. Donatello escapes the cell by having some tools hidden under his belt buckle, which he reveals it behind a door-like hinge in his belt, and that was pretty neato. While the 1987 TMNT Wingnut species isn't new, the Big Bad did outplay the TMNT and company with the ambush in disabling their turtle comms to stop them from taking down his Shadow Warriors. Though the reason why the Big Bad was invading Usagi's dimension is pretty tame and not trying to take over the dimension, per se. And the Big Bad seriously needs to eat a hamburger or something after Usagi cut through his armor. Like, how embarrassing. Like, dude, Wingnut is thicker than you. We probably won't be likely seeing a HD remaster of the 1987 TMNT TV series, so everything in the comic book is pretty and detailed to look at. Usagi Yojimbo's TMNT Saturday Morning Adventures one-shot issue is pretty and detailed to look at, has amusing and standout moments, but could have invented or used an unfamiliar, unestablished, and/or new villain. The downsides are a nitpick of mine, and since this issue advertises Where When, which is a completely different tone, but better comic in my opinion, there's certainly better options. They even added Bebop and Rocksteady for the 1987 show first, so inventing a new character or villain shouldn't have been out of the question. And since they have been adding other characters to Saturday Morning Adventures that are from the other comics, like spoiler alert, Renee, there could have been something else here in this comic. This Usagi one-shot TMNT crossover issue still gets an 85 out of 100. I don't know what review will be next for this channel, but I do have 3 other channels I make content for, which all have some sort of TMNT content on them. Nerdware has my first unboxing and review of some 1987 TMNT Funko Pop Minis. That video is a bit of a mess, but it was my first time unboxing, reviewing, and using a camera with some autofocus issues. On my Critter Nerd channel, I did some voices for Leo, Don, Raph, and Splinter, with a mic I'll no longer use for voiceover, and a TMNT-themed Vine compilation. I don't care if it's 2024, I did make a Vine compilation. My Nerby Games channel has my first game review I've done in a while of the Shredder's Revenge base game. Links to my creative product review and gaming channels, as well as my support links, will all be in the description. Anything related to this channel is linked and displayed on this end screen.